Hi everyone, this is your favorite friend Jay or Jaylan Salah, as you formerly know her, film critic for Geek Vibes Nation and In Session Film. Today I have the pleasure of interviewing director Lynn Rogoff of Birdwoman Sacajawea, a feature-length animated movie that tells the compelling story of Sacajawea, the legendary Shoshone guide, as she leads the Lewis and Clark expedition, discovering her supernatural powers along the way. It is a great interactive film where characters break the fourth wall, speaking directly to the audience. However, let me start by saying hi to Lynn. Lynn, I'm so happy to talk to you today.
Hi, how are you?
I'm
I'm
great.
so glad to be here.
Thank you so much. I want to ask you first, what brought you to Sacagawea or what brought her to you?
Well, I have a company called Amerikids Productions, and we've been in business in various mediums, film, television, games, and our whole thrust is to do stories about young people who've done heroic deeds when they were young. So you had to have been a teenager primarily when you did your heroic deed. And so we tell stories throughout time about young people and who've done heroic deeds and have either not been really well celebrated or known of. And so that's we've been doing these projects for ABC television, for games. We did a game about the Pony Express. We and then Sacagawea came to me, and she was only 16 when she went on this expedition and led Lewis and Clark, and she was already a mother.
Can you believe it?
So, in 1800s, if you were 16, you were pretty much an adult woman by that time, young woman. So, teenagers is only a 20th century concept. They didn't
Yes.
have such a thing as teenagers then.
And tell me, yes, I just want to know, what did you find in her story that made you, as a storyteller, as someone with a creative mind, want to expand on it in this beautiful, magical, realistic way?
Well, I was interested in two things. One, I was interested in this philosophy and this of the Native American people is that they really feel that the earth is their mother and that the sun is their grandmother, and they have a familiar feeling towards nature, that God is in nature and the Great Spirit is in all animals and in all of nature, in the moon and in the planets. They feel God is everywhere. And I was really drawn to that concept. I thought that if you're anybody who spends any time in nature, you can see how magnificent nature is, that reveals the hidden secrets of the planet. And I was also drawn to the fact that here it is 215 years later, and she still remains a heroic, iconic figure. How did that happen? How is it that someone keeps being heroic even after they're long gone and barely known? So there were two things that drew me to her. And I just found it very interesting to figure out how to tell the story from her point of view. How is the coming of age of a young woman and the coming of age of becoming her own person? And what is that? It's the old classic hero's journey
So true.
from a Odyssey on, that you suffer and you have to go through all kinds of challenges in order to become a hero.
That's so
It's not
true.
just one day you do something and you're a hero.
That is true. How do you think AI helped you to create the story in this compelling way as a storyteller? Because I feel there are many tools in our hands, but as storytellers, we don't understand them. So can you please tell us more about how they would help us in future storytelling?
Well, there's a lot of unknowns and it's become controversial. AAI has become very controversial. And I think it's because people don't know the tool. It's a tool.
That's
And
true.
what from I'm an independent filmmaker, and I've always been drawn to telling stories that are not necessarily the biggest commercial success stories, and put to be a pioneer. I've also been interested in technology and pioneering. So all of those came together and with AI as a tool because it allowed an independent filmmaker to make a film on a limited budget and to control the narrative and control the images and be able to tell a story without having to raise millions of dollars. That's really, at the end of the day, for filmmakers, the hardest part is raising money. And even if you went to business school and got your MBA, you still have to figure out how to get people to write checks. So this was a way for us to make a film, tell our
Don't
story. Right
worry.
now, AI is in its infancy and it still
Yes.
needs to be developed. And it's right now, for example, AI can only make 4 seconds of video.
That's so true.
So you've got to cut together a film, keep iterating until you get what you want, and then use only 4 seconds at a time.
But
So
Lynn,
that's a challenge.
I'm interested in you, in Lynn. What made you who you are? A person interested in history, digging deep, learning about stories about young people. It always, I think, starts probably at childhood, but I want to know what made this inspiring woman in front of me.
Well, I grew up as a child of a veterinarian and a teacher, and so I always was around science, and my father was a scientist too, and investigating how to operate on animals that at that time um, anesthesia was not very good for the animals. So he was investigating how to make better anesthesia for the animals so that they wouldn't die under surgery. And my mother was always a learner. And so I grew up with a love of reading and love of knowledge and love of math. So it always helped me with my tech tools. And then I got asked to make a film when I got out of graduate school about three black jazz tap dancers. And I saw the film just explode and become a major classic over the years. It's still, you can still watch it years later on streaming platforms. And so I saw that there was this hunger for historical, cultural products, that people really loved history and loved to learn about people in history. And so I started investigating more and more stories in American history. I always felt, for one reason or another, maybe because I was classically trained, I went to school and got my MFA. And for my master's thesis, I directed Streetcar Named Desire. So I was always interested in a classic old storytelling. And so when I got into the film business and television business, I started working in children's television. And that led me to this concept of children in history, and so that's how that all came to be.
What I
And
love,
then I won a grant from the Writers Guild to do an original screenplay, and I chose this woman in history who 19th century, early 20th century political figure. And so I saw that, and we ended up doing it as a play. And I saw that there was also this great hunger for stories about people who had done heroic and oftentimes dangerous work in American history that had maybe not gotten the best outcome, but they were still heroic because they tried.
It's true.
So that's always been interesting to see how the audience reacts to the work.
I love that you also created those AI-driven chatbots because I tried talking to Sacajawea and it was a very eye-opening experience because I was like, what does it feel like to be an eagle? How does it feel like to do this, to have this shape-shifting power? And I was very curious and I felt that it was a great complementary way to the storytelling. So what drew you to also like you created a universe, so to speak, not just a film. So, how did you manage all of that? And what brought it in your mind?
That's a good question because I call myself on the bleeding edge of on technology and work. Uh, you know, I got access to because I was working with this company called DID, and they were very excited by what I was doing with their tool in the film. They showed me this AI agent that they were developing. And could not believe that this was possible, that you could feed the image of your character into this technology and give it in a knowledge base, and she would suddenly answer questions for you. So I was really saying, well, how could I use this software? And we tried it one way and online, and it really was too cumbersome. And then my university where I teach, I'm a professor in New York Institute of Technology. They were soliciting professors. Did you have an idea for AI in education, leveraging AI for education? So said, well, I have this idea. Let's make these AI chatbots and with the characters from our film. And they loved the idea. So they even gave me more money than the original grant was for. And then I went to DID and I said, I got this grant money. And they said, oh, that's great idea. We'll give you unlimited credits. So I had two different institutions that were behind it. And so I have a colleague who's a computer scientist teacher, and she and I worked on developing these chatbots. So we already knew what the characters looked like, and we already knew pretty much what they should know. So in the case of a chatbot, you've got to feed it. In our case, we didn't want it to go out on the internet and answer questions from Wikipedia or something. We wanted to control the narrative. So we've been cultivating what kind of knowledge these characters should have, and then what kind of personality they should have. So each one is a different character, and each one sees the trip from a different point of view and sees their life from it. So it's an interesting way of marketing the film and also teaching history. So it serves a number of purposes. It can be both a way for you to engage more with the film and the characters and history, and it's a way to learn about America history. So we believe that this technology, you could learn anything with this chatbot. You could learn from Carl Sagan or Neil Tyson about astronomy if you had them as characters and gave them a knowledge base. So we're trying to see if we can make it into a prototype for an edtech solution as well.
Wow, that sounds amazing. And now putting technology, because I feel like you infuse both. You have history and you have technology. So all the questions that I have are technological and also historical. But what did you learn
Okay.
about the Shoshone tribe? Because you wrote about one of their heroes. So what did you learn about them that probably didn't know before entering this project?
The actor who plays the Chief Camaway, Daniel Two Feathers, has been an incredible fan of this project. And he feels why he loves it so much is that we're telling the story from their point of view and that we see what was happening in their lives at that time. And in 1803, 1804, they were on a mountaintop starving. And why were they on the mountaintop starving? Is because they were fighting with other native tribes and they did not have guns. And the other tribes had guns. They had horses, but they didn't have guns. So it forced them to live up on the mountaintop without access to the buffalo. And so that's why they were starving. Uh, but they were a very proud people and were very strong people. And so it was very, very interesting because she came from them,
Yes.
that tribe, and she would prior to that period, there were a lot of tribes that would go in and steal young women or young girls from the other tribe to make their uh, tribe bigger and healthier. And so she was one of those young girls that was stolen from another tribe, by another tribe, brought east, and then traded, but kept on being traded further and further east until some French Canadian old man bought her in a gambling um, episode, evening of gambling. And he liked young girls. And so she ends up all the way in North Dakota and living among another tribe and having to bear this man's child. And so when Lewis and Clark meet her, she is pregnant, 16 years old and pregnant. And the tribal elders encounter Lewis and Clark, befriend them, let them live in the village during the winter, but tell them, you are not going to make it across the Rocky Mountains. Number one, because there is no water route. Everybody was thinking, oh, there's a way across the continent by water, and we'll get all the way to the west coast and we'll trade with China. That was what they were how they found America to begin with, because they thought they were going to get to China by going west. So when the tribal elders told Lewis and Clark, you're not going to get there without taking her, because she speaks Shoshone. So the Shoshone language saved her and saved the expedition. So when she was able to go to find her, number one, she found her tribe, which was like a needle in a haystack.
Yeah.
And even Lewis and Clark write in the journals that no dramatist could have made this up.
True.
That how could a young girl find her tribe on the top of a steep, cold mountain? And then on top of it, her brother had become the chief. So there's a lot of drama in the story of the Shoshone people. They are still a tribe. They are, and then when, and they are still living in the same vicinity. And 200 years later, they decide to make a gold coin, a $1 coin with her image on it.
Oh my
So
God.
we have a legal tender here in America with her image on it. And they went to the Shoshone tribe. Nobody knows what Sacajawea looked like because there was never any painting of her and there was no photograph of her. And so they used a young woman from the tribe to fashion an image of her on the dollar coin.
So Where did your inspiration for her creation come from then, when you created her in the film?
So we wanted a pretty, well, somebody that was young and pretty,
That's so
but
true.
strong.
Mhm.
We wanted her to be, she had a strong will. And the actress who plays her or voices her, fabulous actress.
Amazing.
She loved the story of Sacajawea. See, what's really amazing about Sacagawea's story is that she's a legend both in the American history and in Native history. So it's a story about the early interactions between two cultures that were peaceful. It was, I was hoping that people would see that there is a possibility for peaceful interaction. You don't have to be killers and warriors and be antagonistic. You can help each other. And that was how they felt at that time. This was the first interaction between the white man and the Native American
That's so
for
true.
many of these tribes as they went west.
That's true. That's true. So the casting process, this is what I want to ask you about. The amazing actors playing the characters. How did it go? How did you find Sacagawea and how did you find Chief and all these amazing actors?
So, originally we were going to we produce it as an audio drama. So we put a casting call out on I went to NYU and I asked the people at NYU if they recommended. We found the guy who speaks French and English. He plays Charbonneau. Right. And that was a hard one. And then we found this in the Native American acting community. There's a big Native American acting community, and Sarah Lee was recommended to us, and she wanted this role so badly. She felt very akin to the character, and she's Canadian, Native American from a Canadian tribe. And as you may or may not know, this concept of Canada versus America is a recent uh, geographical division that didn't exist when they were living there before America existed.
Yes.
So they would go back and forth. They were tribes that would run out, move as the buffalo moved. So she was Canadian and she knew the story very well and loved the story and loved the way we were telling it. And she had that ability to make her both strong and very young. That's what I like about her. She's very impish, she won't lie down and take no for an answer. And I love that about her character. And the actor who played Chief Camaway, he he's comes from the Westworld. I don't know if you know that series Westworld.
Yes,
And
of
he's
course.
and he was in that, and he's a Lakota language expert.
Wow.
So we had to learn, the actors had to learn how to say certain words in the Shoshone language. And they very much wanted to say it properly. And so they had to go back and learn the Shoshone language, which is not a very popular language. So they dedicated themselves to this. And this was all recorded during COVID. We were going to record in a studio and then everything got locked down. So we moved to online and everything was recorded online, uploaded. We had to teach the actors how to record in their closets if they didn't
Wow.
have a recording studio. The characters who play Lewis and Clark, actors, one is in England. The guy who plays Clark is a British actor, and the one who plays Lewis is a Texan. So we were all over the globe, and but because of the internet and because we could upload in the cloud, we just had everybody upload their dialogue, and then the editors had to reassemble everything. And the editors were great. I mean, the editors loved the project. This project was very attractive to people for a number of reasons, and they wanted to work on it. And the editors were devoted to making the soundtrack uh, exquisite, and you can hear it. We really devoted a lot of energy to the sound effects and the music and the way that the characters are edited together. So, because we were doing audio drama first, we had to concentrate on telling the story with the audio. So it's a very strong audio component to the story.
It's
Most AI is told with voiceover. You know that we because we were coming from the audio drama world, we had a lot of storytelling that was being told through actors and um, the characters. So we had to bring that component in. If you look at AI films today, they're mostly either voiceover or no voice or music or special effects sound, but there rarely are people speaking because they haven't figured that out yet.
wow, this sounds like a heroic journey for making the film itself. Where do you see yourself next? Like, what is next for Lynn? What are you doing next?
Well, we're trying to raise money to do project episode number 2
Oh,
because this is not finished. This is a big story. Episode 1 ends in the top of the Rocky Mountains.
that's true.
The expedition has to get to the Pacific Ocean and back, and what happens when she returns, because she's a different person,
Yes.
and what her choices are at the end, which is very dramatic and very heart wrenching story about what she chooses to do with her life after the expedition. And there's a big story also about the conflict between whether she died at 22 years old or she lived to be 90 something. So what happened was during the centennial, 1905 to 1908, there was very much a renewed interest in who is this woman Sacajawea, because nobody had ever heard of her. So the United States government sent Indian affairs expert up to the Shoshone Mountains, and they said that she lived to be an old woman. She came back and she lived among them and she helped negotiate very important treaties. And they showed the inspector where she was buried. And of course, it was years later. And so they had really no material proof that it was her. But they built a monument to her, and you could go up there and see the headstone there. And so there was competing narratives. Did she die? Like some ferryman said that her husband Charbonneau was on a ferry boat with an Indian wife, and that the wife died, and that it might have been Sacagawea, and therefore the historians say, well, she died at 22 years old. So there's these. We were interested in exploring the story from the Shoshone point of view, that she actually lived to be an old lady. So that's we were exploring. That's another part of the story is what happens after. So she because she saw what was possible if you knew how to read and write and navigate waters, she wanted her child to be educated. And he was half white, and in the Native American community at that time, he was considered a half breed.
Yeah.
So she didn't like the way she was treated by her husband, that she was one of many women, and she didn't like that, way of being treated. And she wanted him to grow up to have one woman. And so she just makes a decision to go to St. Louis, which she had never been, and where Clark was living, and let him bring up the child, because he had become very smitten with this little baby. Here they were traveling through blizzards and starvation, and this little baby was well kept for and survived. And so they expeditioners all got very endeared to the child. And in fact, there is a monument named after the child in the Midwest called Pompey's Pillar. And he wrote, on the pillar or near the pillar that he was there. So William Clark signed his initials there. So, there's a long history to be told, and we wanted to tell it. So we're trying to raise the money to do the next episode or two.
Definitely. And
That's all.
I can see this project blooming and becoming something even bigger. And I can't wait for you to do episode 2 and us to talk about furthermore. And also
All
for
right.
to tackle even more characters and more people like Sacajawea, because I feel like Lynn has a lot to tell and a lot to give into the world. So I can't wait for you to explore even more characters on the long run.
Well, our company does games, and so we were at one point we made a little game where Bird Woman becomes Bird Girl and helps save endangered animals. So we had a lot of ideas, many of them we prototype, but then, it's oftentimes the issue is how do you raise money to continue developing? You can prototype, but then you want the team to get paid and you want the technology to be robust. And this all requires some group to come on and invest further on the project. So that's what we've been up to, is trying to make relationships and connections with other groups and organizations and see how we can further these stories.
And I can't wait to see more from you. Thank you so much, Lynn. This was an eye-opener. I love Bird Woman Sacagawea, and I hope everyone watches it and interacts with the character and just gets inside this magical universe because it's both historical and also futuristic in a way.
Right, it is. We made the characters like game characters. They talk directly to the audience, so you feel like you're inside of a game.
Yes, yes, it feels so. It
Well,
feels
people could go to our website, AMERIKIDS, Amerikids, and link to it and see the film. And it's on Family Time TV now, or you could go straight to Family Time TV on your Google store or your Android store, or then they can, if they want to communicate with us, you can contact me through the website.
okay.
And we're on all social media. We're on Facebook, we're on LinkedIn, we're on Instagram, so or YouTube. I know a lot of people like to with the film, the trailer is on YouTube, but the film is not.
I will link to it. I will link to all the links that you mentioned so that people can access the film easily.
All right, great. If you need help, I'll send you everything.